हाँ शुरू करो.
I will be delivering a talk on non-epithelial prostate neoplasms. Prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in men. It is subdivided into epithelial, neuroendocrine, prostate stromal, mesenchymal, hematolymphoid, and miscellaneous tumors, according to WHO classification. More than 95% of the malignant tumors of prostate are adenocarcinoma.
Slides are not moving. Put it on PP. This thing. Move it. It's not moving.
Is it visible now? Is it visible?
First slide only we are on. Non the title slide only is there.
Are the slides visible?
Yes.
Okay. So more than 95% of malignant tumors of prostate are adenocarcinoma arising from prostatic epithelium. Prostatic tumors arising from prostatic stroma or from ectopic locations within the prostate account for fewer than 5% of the prostate neoplasm. This is the WHO histological classification. Broadly, they are divided into epithelial tumors, squamous tumors, mesenchymal tumors, neuroendocrine tumors, prostate stromal tumors, and miscellaneous tumors. Various differential diagnoses of cystic and solid prostatic and periprostatic masses are as follows. Prostatic neoplastic mass, the DDs are stromal tumors, prostate stromal sarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, sarcomatoid carcinoma, or small cell carcinoma. And the various non-neoplastic masses are BHP abscess and utricle cysts. So we'll be talking about neoplastic masses. Firstly, prostate stromal tumors. The prostate stromal tumors arise from specialized stromal cells, have been reported in a variety of terms, including phyllodes tumor, atypical stromal hyperplasia, atypical stromal smooth muscle hyperplasia, phyllodes type of hyperplasia, and cystic epithelial stromal tumors. These can be classified into prostate stromal sarcoma or stromal tumors of uncertain malignant potential, STUM, according to degree of cellularity, presence of mitotic figures, necrosis, stromal overgrowth on histological examination. Few less than 100 cases of STUM have been reported worldwide, and their imaging appearance have not been well described in the radiological literature. The STUM are mainly neoplastic, and they diffusely infiltrate the prostate gland and extends into adjacent tissue. And that is why they are often recurrence are seen. Although most cases of stromal STUM does not behave in aggressive fashion, occasional cases may recur after resection, and minority can progress to stromal sarcoma. 4 patterns have been described, which are atypia pattern, hypercellular, myxoid, and phyllodes pattern. STUM exhibits a mixture of histological pattern. Approximately half of reported cases show degenerative atypia pattern. About 16% of stromal tumors of uncertain malignant potential are associated with concurrently or subsequently with sarcoma. And histological type of STUM do not correlate with clinical behavior or likelihood of being associated with sarcoma. Although STUM arise from stromal elements, the non-neoplastic glandular elements are immunoreactive to PSA in 75 to 100% cases. The stromal epithelial interaction can profoundly influence prostate epithelial growth and differentiation. Thus, they can lead to elevation of PSA levels. STUM is reported to occur in 27 to 83 years, median age is 58 years, and peak incidence in 6th to 7th decade. They most commonly present with urinary obstruction, followed by abnormal DRE, hematuria, hematospermia, rectal fullness, palpable rectal mass, or elevated PSA levels. The STUM frequently arises from posterior prostate, protrude basally, involve peripheral and transitional zones. On MRI, they can be seen as well circumcised mass, which are cystic or partly solid. The areas of high T2 signal on MRI correspond to cystic dilatation of prostate glands with prostatic secretion, which has been described as bloody, mucinous, or clear. Scattered areas of T1 hyperintensity compatible with intratumoral hemorrhage may be present. The solid components show heterogeneous contrast enhancement. Although stump does not contain fibrous capsule on histopathological examination, abrupt transition between stump and background tissue can simulate tumor capsules on MRI. High T2 signal helps to differentiate a stump from prostatic adenocarcinoma, which are generally T2 hypointense. These are some clinical images, radiological images of MRI. This is a 67-year-old patient of stump who presented with urinary symptoms and raised PSA. On T2 weighted scan, multi-located partly cystic and partly solid tumors can be seen. And on this section, it shows mild heterogeneous enhancement on the second slide. This is the histopathological slide. This is the second case. It shows a predominantly solid prostatic mass with intermediate T2 signal enhancement, and margins are well circumcised with no invasion. Next are prostate stromal sarcomas. In contrast to stump, sarcomas tend to affect a slightly younger population, around 25 to 86 years. Half of them occur before 50 years. They arise de novo or may exist in association with pre-existing stump, thereby suggesting a potential for stump to differentiate to sarcoma in rare cases. On gross examination, sarcoma are predominantly solid lesions. Occasionally, edema, hemorrhage, or cyst may be identified. Microscopically, either a solid growth of stromal cells may be seen intercalated between benign prostate glands. The presence of hypercellularity, atypia, mitotic figure, and necrosis differentiation differentiates prostate stromal sarcomas from stump. On imaging, prostate stromal sarcomas are predominantly solid masses with heterogeneous contrast enhancement. Low-grade sarcomas can relatively have circumcised margin or can be invasive. High-grade have invade adjacent structures, have central enhancing T2 components. Metastatic disease involves lung and bones. The treatment, actually, there are different for localized or localized and locally advanced disease. The surgery remains the standard of care. It is mostly radical prostatectomy or cystoprostatectomy or pelvic exentration. Chemotherapy can be given in neoadjuvant or adjuvant setting, comprising of gemcitabine, docetaxel, doxorubicin with hypophosphamide, or cyclophosphamide, vincristine, and doxorubicin. Positive surgical margins are single most important factor for prognosis and predicting recurrence. For patient with metastatic disease, chemotherapy regimens are used, mostly VAC or MAID, mesna, adriamycin, ifosfamide, and dacarbazine. Durable response in the setting of systemic disease was not seen with any of the regimen, and median cancer-free, cancer-specific survival period was 1.5 years. This is a MRI finding of 48-year-old man with stromal sarcoma low grade who had abnormal DRE and elevated PSA. It shows predominantly solid mass with small cystic component. This is a excised specimen. This is a 30-year-old mass presented with gross hematuria. Biopsy result was high-grade spindle cell sarcoma. On T1 weighted images, heterogeneous enhancing solid mass with infiltration into bladder can be seen. And on T2, non-enhancing areas compatible with tumor necrosis can be seen. The next is leiomyosarcoma. It is the most common sarcoma in adults. Patients present at 40 to 78 years and frequently present with urinary obstruction, perineal or pelvic pain, urine frequency, and hematuria. There are often infiltrative. Microscopically, these hypercellular lesions are composed of intersecting bundles of spindle cells with atypia ranging from moderate to severe. The vast majority are high grade with frequent mitosis and necrosis. Diagnosis is confirmed of IHC staining, positive for smooth muscle, actin, vimentin, and CD44. Negative for S100, cytokeratin, and CD117. On MRI, leiomyosarcoma appears as heterogeneous enhancing solid mass with poorly defined margins and tumor infiltration into adjacent organs. Local recurrence is frequent and most common metastatic site is lung. Regional lymph node metastases are infrequent. This is a multimodal therapy is used, including surgery, pre or post-op radiation therapy, and neoadjuvant or adjuvant therapy has been used. Operable tumors are usually treated with surgery, which may be followed by radiation therapy and adjuvant chemo, particularly in men with positive margins. Patients with bulky disease may be treated with neoadjuvant chemotherapy with or without radiotherapy, followed by attempt for surgical resection. In patient with inoperable or disseminated disease, systemic chemotherapy is given to induce clinical response, but this rarely translates into sustained remission. Patient who developed isolated pulmonary metastasis after complete resection of primary tumor may be offered the option of surgical resection, as this can be sometimes associated with long-term survival. Surgery with curative intent, including radical retropubic prostatectomy, radical cystoprostatectomy, suprapubic prostatectomy, and pelvic exentration. Various chemotherapy regimens have been used, but most patients receive anthracycline-based combination with alkylating agents and Vinca alkaloids. Platinum-based have been used with mixed results. The clinical outcome of patients with prostate leiomyosarcoma is poor. This is a MRI image. The patient presented with urinary symptoms, pelvic pain, abnormal DRE, and elevated PSA. MR images shows heterogeneous enhancing solid mass with poorly defined margins and invading into bladder and rectum. The next is rhabdomyosarcoma. It is the most common prostate sarcoma in childhood. Occurs from infancy to early adulthood with an average age at diagnosis at 5 years. Most present with bladder outlet obstruction, abdominal pain, distension, dysuria, and signs of UTI. The gross appearance is variable. Margin of the tumor may be infiltrative or well defined by compressed pseudocapsule. It may contain gelatinous myxoid areas or regions of secondary hemorrhage. Most prostate carcinoma are embryonal subtype and are considered to be favorable histological subtype. The embryonal subtype has variable proportions of loose myxoid foci containing primitive cells. The small primitive cells frequently display thin cytoplasmic processes. It is important to identify this rare case of alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma involving the prostate because the prognosis is unfavorable and necessitates more aggressive chemotherapy. The alveolar subtype is composed of large round or oval cells. The periphery cells in rhabdomyosarcoma alveolar type frequently assumes a well-organized picket fence arrangement. Because of the large tumor size at the time of diagnosis, it is difficult to determine the organ of origin, prostate versus bladder. On CT MRI, the rhabdomyosarcoma appears as bulky masses with heterogeneous enhancement. Tumor necrosis and cystic change are common. Most patients with rhabdomyosarcoma is incomplete resection or biopsy with gross residual disease. A small but significant proportion of patients present with distant metastasis. This is the MRI image. It is a T2 weighted MR image showing multilobulated T2 hyperintense mass arising from prostate. The next is the same. It is a 2-year-old boy after chemotherapy treatment. It is a T1 weighted MR image showing multilobulated heterogeneous enhancing mass in prostate. These are the various guidelines according to which the treatment of rhabdomyosarcoma should be commenced. For surgery, there are various grouping which I will be describing in the next slide. Group 1 patients have the best, group 4 the worst prognosis. We should try to remove all visible tumors if feasible without excess morbidity, while local excision is indicated for tumors to achieve negative margins if feasible. Organ function should be tried to be preserved for bladder and vagina. Primary chemotherapy followed by radiotherapy is indicated for these sites after initial biopsy. Delayed excision may improve prognosis after allowing chemotherapy and radiotherapy response to achieve a partial response. For radiotherapy, the guidelines are for grade 1 embryonal, there is no need to give radiotherapy. Complete surgical excision is all that is needed for local control. Patients with grade 4 disease should, however, receive radiotherapy to the primary site, regional lymph node if involved, and site of metastasis. Patient with grade 2 disease have better outcome with intensified therapy. Local failure for grade 3 patients is 19% of all GU sites. For group 3, daily radiotherapy up to 50 gyron is standard. And for chemotherapy, VAC is the standard for grade 3 and group 3 and group 4 patients. No evidence that doxorubicin and cisplatin plus etoposide improves outcomes in patients with advanced disease. VAC is equally effective as VI and VIE. Increased dose of cyclophosphamide has improved survival for patients with embryonal histology, but not alveolar or undifferentiated histology. And for pathological variant, alveolar histology has worse prognosis. With for bladder RMS patients, maturing rhabdomyoblast is sequential biopsy after chemotherapy and radiotherapy does not necessarily signify the presence of malignant cells. When this continues, continue chemotherapy and follow with imaging studies to allow for bladder preservation. Translocation of chromosome 2 to 13 occurs in older patients, has worse prognosis. Translocation 1 to 13 occurs in young patients and associated with better prognosis. Tumor should be sent to pathology for analysis without preservatives. This is allow for more molecular studies to be performed on these tumors. All patients with RMS should be followed long term due to risk of second malignancy. And second malignancy risk is highest in patient receiving radiotherapy and alkylating agents. These are the staging system. T1 is confined to anatomic site of origin. T2 is extension or fixation to surrounding tissue. And N1 is no regional lymph node involved. And M0, M1 are no distant mets and distant met. Accordingly, the grouping is done, which I have been saying in the previous slide. Group 1, 3, and 4. And the treatment is carried out according to this group. Two protocols for the treatment are used. The Society of International Pediatric Oncology, they aim to reduce the use of local therapy with initial chemotherapy followed by chemotherapy intensification if response is poor. Other protocol is COG protocol where they use radiotherapy for local therapy after chemotherapy. For bladder and prostate rhabdomyosarcoma specifically, SIOP 5-year overall survival is 80% and 5-year event-free survival is 64% compared to 86 and 79% in COG trial respectively. Outcomes of GU-RMS does not appear to differ based on which protocol is followed, but for RMS overall, COG methods are better than EPS, better than SIOP protocol for EPS and overall survival. Current protocol focuses on obtaining a tissue diagnosis when complete excision is not feasible or would result in significant morbidity such as radical cystoprostatectomy. In North America, the COG protocol is followed where chemotherapy with subsequent radiotherapy is given, and exentration surgery is typically reserved for patients who fail chemotherapy and radiotherapy and have a residual tumor with goal of resection with negative margins. Lastly, there is a sarcoid carcinoma variant. It is a rare type. Only 100 cases has been reported so far. Mean age of presentation is 47 to 90 years, median age 70. Tumor is most commonly composed of mixture of both malignant and spindle cell elements. Heterologous elements resembling osteosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, chondrosarcoma, and angiosarcoma may be present in subset of cases. Patients with sarcomatoid carcinoma often have a history of prostate adenocarcinoma. Although the diagnosis may be remote, most patients have had treatment following the original diagnosis of prostate adenocarcinoma, had received EBRT, hormonal therapy, or combination of the above. Sarcomatoid carcinoma usually appears as predominant necrotic mass with thick regular enhancing rim and internal septations with invasion to adjacent organ. 38 to 60% develop metastasis, most frequent being metastasis to bone, liver, and lung. Patient with sarcomatoid carcinoma has poor outcomes, and the 5-year survival rate is 41%. This is the MRI image of a 13-year history of prostate carcinoma 13 years ago, treated with radical prostatectomy, hormone therapy, and EBRT was given. Patient presented with tumor recurrence, and biopsy showed sarcomatoid carcinoma. I showed the T1 images showed predominant necrotic mass with thick irregular enhancing rim and internal septage. The last is the neuroendocrine tumor, which is most common among it is small cell carcinoma. It is widely distributed within the prostate. Nearly all prostate carcinoma have some degree of neuroendocrine differentiation, ranging from minimal to focal in most cases to extensive and multifocal in only 10% of the cases. Pure small cell carcinoma is rare and accounts for only about 1% of all primary prostate malignancy. Clinically, small cell carcinoma is highly aggressive with rapidly progressive disease, visceral mets, poor response, and androgen ablation therapy, and relatively low PSA levels. On CT and MRI, small cell carcinoma frequently presents with extensive osseous metastasis and abdominal and pelvic lymphadenopathy. The appearance of predominantly lytic bone metastasis and relatively low PSA may be a clue that the primary prostate cancer is small cell carcinoma rather than adenocarcinoma. The patients with small cell carcinoma have dismal prognosis with medial survival 9 to 10 months and 5-year survival less than 1%. Extra gastrointestinal stromal tumors of prostate. The E-GIST of prostate is very rare entity with only a handful of cases reported so far. IHC is used for diagnosis. More than 95% express CD117 and 50 to 100% patient express CD34. While some are stained with positively with desmin, S100 protein and actin. Age varies from 30 to 75 years. Patient presents with acute urinary retention, weight loss, abnormal diarrhea, perineal pain, frequency, nocturia, dysuria, and hematuria. The main treatment is radical prostatectomy. According to English literature, patient undergoing radical surgery showed neither recurrence nor distant metastasis. This is the MRI image showing a large mass occupying the majority of the prostate. And these are the immunohistochemistry staining slides. This is the treatment and outcomes of prostate E-GIST in the literature. Almost all the cases have good response treated by radical therapy with or without imatinib. Hardly any case shows recurrence. Risk of according to size and mitotic count, the E-GIST tumors have been classified as very low risk, intermediate, and high risk. According to the risk, this risk stratification, it is decided where the imatinib should be given or not. 400 mg daily dose is given, and it is recommended for high risk patients following complete surgical removal of E-GIST. Thank you.
Very good. That's a very exhaustive presentation and more of pathology than anything else. How do you explain PSA being raised, man, and some of them? Ankit,
are you there?
Hello.
How do you explain PSA being raised in them?
Hello. Hello.
I think he's not there.
Yeah.
Ankit?
Hello.
Yeah, can hear you.
Because of the proliferation of prostate stromal cells, the prostate stromal and epithelial interfaces, there is a disturbance in this interface, and because of that, the epithelial proliferation occurs, and so the PSA rises, but not that much of that of prostate adenocarcinoma, but slight elevation are seen in most of the stromal tumors.
So how much is the elevation? I mean, up to 4 is normal. So how much will the PSA be in these patients? 6, 7? Okay, how much can it go up to?
It has been mentioned that around 6 to 10 is the most common, but can go up to 10 to 15, 10 to 20. In the advanced and metastatic.
Okay. The change that has happened in terms of children with rhabdomyosarcoma is that less aggressive treatment, more selective, sparing surgery, and not to give everybody, just like Wilms tumor. Same thing has happened with rhabdomyosarcoma, especially in children. And naturally, on two sides of the Atlantic, there will be difference of opinion. SIOP is European and COG is American. So they have differences of opinion with their treatments and how they upfront treat these patients. So SIOP protocol is basically upfront biopsy, chemo, then only proceed. Here, it's totally different. So the reason why they are restricted, earlier there used to be multimodal therapy for all rhabdos. And they had the very good cure rates. Some of these children develop secondary malignancy, just like testes and all the others. So there has been a sea change in their development. One of the worst tumors that I have seen personally is neuroendocrine tumors in this. So very bad. Terrible. Even if you take them out, they recur badly. Patients are in a sorry state. Very, very bad. Dirty disease. We had a very good survival in an alveolar sarcoma. You know, you talked about sarcoma. Alveolar sarcoma, we had a very good survival. It's a very rare tumor. And that fellow developed a secondary tumor in the perineum about 20 years later. He was operated when he was 15 or 16 years old. And then he married one of the nurses who was looking after him in the ward in Vellore. And he moved to Palghat. He's from Palghat actually. Basically, he's got a furniture store and does a lot of carpentry. And then when I came here, he came with recurrence in the perineum. So I excised that, and that turned out to be a leiomyosarcoma. So then subsequently he had radiation. He was doing very well. He came for a review one day, and then he used to drive himself. And then everything was okay, and he said, okay, go back. His wife rang me up. No, not his wife. A friend of his rang up and said that he has not come home. I said, he left long ago. He was very fine. They found him on the road, dead on the wheel. He had a myocardial while he was driving halfway between Coimbatore and Palghat. He was found dead. Then his wife came running. I know because she was a nurse in one of the wards, and she was poor thing. So he got a child. He adopted a girl, and very nice chap. He used to come very regularly for reviews. Anyway, so there are some
Sad story actually. Very sad.
Sorry?
Sad story, I said.
I know, very, very sad. He was admitted in 04 East actually. This nurse also was there, a staff nurse in 04 East. So there are a few patients around. This guy, we don't know what the final biopsy is. So Soumya, if it is E-GIST, you report it. If it is E-GIST, because that is one of the biopsies on the thing, no? Yes. These are better sent to pathology journals, where they have a record, you know. Clinical fellows, they are not interested. So you send it to some other journals where they will be more interested, because numbers are very few. And the only way you can add is to contribute to literature by saying, okay, one more. Then somebody will collate all this and do an analysis 10 years later and say, okay, so many patients were there in this. It does make a difference, because people who are doing studies like this, they will ask you later on, can we use your data and all the rest of it. And you will get acknowledged for using your data being used. Still that's all. But that's why I kept pestering you, what happened to the biopsy? Go on and ask that lady. You must be proactive. Huh? Anyway. Okay, thank you. I think they're off, huh?
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye.